The prose passage prompt. What is the prose passage prompt? It is usually the second essay in the free response or FRQ section of the AP Literature exam. The prose essay involves analysis of a small piece from a larger work. For example, the College Board may choose to have you analyze a character's first appearance, a key scene involving two characters, or the introduction of a character to a new environment. Unless you are familiar with the novel, you won't know which of these they've actually chosen, but you'll have enough within that prose passage to complete the answer they've given you. What makes the prose passage tricky? Unlike the poetry FRQ, the prose passage prompt only gives you part of a larger work. Sometimes you'll feel like there's missing information. Don't worry, deal just with the information they've given you. Also, the prose passage is often longer than the poem. This means you have 40 minutes to read a full page of text, analyze it, and write on it. Don't worry, you'll have everything you need in that passage to complete the task. So how do you tackle the prose passages? First, annotate as you read. This really is key. You won't have time to read it twice, so it is important that you underline and label the literary devices as you go. Second, determine what the passage is about. Write a 2 to 3 sentence summary at the bottom of the page. This will be the starting point for your analysis. Third, begin organizing your ideas. Create a quick outline, which I'll show you later. Go back and number your quotes based on where they fall in your outline. This will make writing your paper a snap. Fourth, write your essay. This seems silly, but it's important that you make sure that you state a claim and that you focus on giving specific examples. Don't worry about what's not in the passage, or don't worry about following off down the rabbit trail. Make sure you stay focused on what they've asked you to analyze. So first, annotate as you read. And here's an example of a small piece from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein that I have annotated. It was dark when I awoke. I felt cold also, and half frightened, as it were, instinctively, finding myself so desolate. Before I had quitted your apartment on a sensation of cold, I had covered myself with some clothes, but these were insufficient to secure me from the dews of night. I was a poor, helpless, miserable wretch. I knew and could distinguish nothing, but feeling pain invade me on all sides, I sat down and wept. This is pretty much the creature's first explanation of his coming into being, his birth as it were. And if you were to look at the passage and look for examples of diction and imagery, you'll see what I've underlined. For diction, I've chosen words like frightened, desolate, insufficient to secure me, poor, helpless, miserable, all of which are starting to convey some sort of characterization of the creature. For your imagery, I've used italics. It was dark. We can kind of picture the darkness surrounding him. He covered himself with some clothes. Feeling pain invade him on all sides. Phrases that kind of describe what's going on, appeal to our senses. Second, determine what the passage is about. So looking at the passage again, you have to ask yourself, what's the point? How is this creating a character for the creature? So my summary for this one would be simple. This passage introduces the creature to the audience. He is lonely, cold, and miserable. He describes how he had to fend for himself. This creates sympathy in the reader. Notice in that last sentence, I'm already starting to get into my analysis. I'm moving away from summary and trying to decide what's the point? Why'd they give me this piece? Third, begin organizing your ideas. And this is the example of the quick outline I mentioned earlier. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4 snapshot of your paper. Your introduction is always going to be the same. And usually you would give a full thesis, but this sentence serves to give you a purpose. This passage creates sympathy for the creature. For diction, I didn't want to put the passage here and make it too tiny for you to read, but I've listed the words that I would probably include in that paragraph. Frightened, desolate, poor, helpless, miserable wretch. For imagery, again, I've got my list. It was dark, covered myself with some clothes, feeling pain invade me on all sides. This is where it's important that I label these literary devices on the very first step. Otherwise, I'm going to have to read through the passage, even just the ones I've underlined, several times, and that wastes precious time. Fourth, write your essay. Here's my sample body paragraph where I've pulled out my information from my quickie outline. In this excerpt, Mary Shelley creates sympathy for the creature through her use of morose diction. You notice how I've got an adjective there. It's not just diction, but I'm telling you the tone of it. She presents his desolate life as one devoid of human contact. He awakes, frightened, and unsure of what to do next. The creature's early life, which is lonely and confusing, creates empathy in the reader, who can understand the helpless feelings of the creature. Additionally, Shelley highlights the creature as a miserable wretch who laments his solidarity. She conveys to the reader the creature's miserable first moments. You'll notice with each of these quotes, and we'll talk about this in a later unit, how they are integrated smoothly. If you read the sentence out loud, you don't know where the quote is. You have to look at the paper to figure it out. So what about sarcasm? You're probably asking yourself, what about it? Well, the prose passages are often examples of sarcasm. To be a discerning reader, you're going to need to kind of read between the lines to see, is the author actually in favor of this person, or are they being sarcastic? So in order to identify sarcasm or satire, you're going to need to compare the language used in the passage and the topic being described. For example, if the narrator describes a character as being a kind-hearted old fellow, and then has him kicking his servants out into the cold, then you can be sure that the first comment was sarcasm.